You are now listening to Smoke After Dark.
Welcome to Smoke After Dark. Tonight, I am talking about the haunting of Al Capone. Many people know Al Capone as one of the most notorious mobsters in history, certainly the most notorious out of Chicago. What many people do not know is the ghost who haunted Al Capone in the later years into the twilight of his life. Al Capone was born in New York City, New York, raised in Brooklyn by his parents who immigrated from Naples, Italy. America was very uncomfortable with the mass influx of people from foreign-born nations, causing Al Capone to be discriminated against and pushing him to become violent at an early age. Attending school until 6th grade, where he dropped out at the age of 14. He punched a teacher in the face, who did strike him first. He worked odd jobs where he could get them, from candy store clerk to bowling alley pen boy, a laborer in an ammunition plant, and a cutter in a book bindery, all while serving in the South Brooklyn Rippers and 40 Thieves Juniors gangs. Al Capone became a member of the James Street Boys gang, run by Johnny Torrio, associated with the 5 Points gang. Johnny Torrio was Al Capone's mentor through these years. Torrio moved to Chicago, Illinois in 1909 to help run the giant brothel business under Chicago crime boss Big Jim Colosimo. In 1919, Capone arrived in Chicago, Illinois, and shortly after, Colosimo was assassinated to make room for Torrio's rule. Specifics about who assassinated Big Jim Colosimo are up for debate. In 1924, Capone was claimed to be responsible for the murder of Joe Howard in retribution for Howard's earlier assault of one of Capone's friends. William McSwiggan would take the case, and as prosecutor failed to indict Capone. After an unsuccessful hit was placed on Torrio, a short stint in prison followed. He retired to Italy after. Al Capone would then take over as crime Caesar of Chicago. By 1926, Al Capone had gone into hiding for 3 months after some of his gunmen inadvertently killed the prosecutor McSwiggan, who failed to indict Al Capone. McSwiggan was in the wrong place at the wrong time, as the hit was intended to be for 2 men who were with him. These men were childhood friends of McSwiggan's, who were also beer runners at the time. Al Capone would go unpunished, and by 1927 had amassed a fortune of $100 million and felt untouchable. The St. Valentine Day Massacre was the most notorious and ruthless killing documented of Al Capone's reign of Chicago's underbelly. 7 members of Bugs Moran's gang were machine-gunned down in a garage on Chicago's north side on February 14, 1929. They impersonated police officers, and as they had them lined up, continued to shoot down all 7 members of Bugs Moran's gang. Al Capone would be serving 10 months in a Holmesburg prison in Philadelphia for getting caught with a concealed weapon. One of the men who died that day was a low-level ranking mobster named James Jimmy Clark. Jimmy Clark worked for Bugs and was also his brother-in-law. The reports from the jail say Al Capone became miserable in prison and would shout out at night for Jimmy to leave him alone. The other prisoners heard this as well and even said he would have conversations with someone in his jail cell. When Capone was released, he hoped to return to his personal affairs. Wherever Capone went, the ghost of Jimmy Clark is said to have went as well, up to the point of Al Capone ordering a psychic to try and put the ghost of Jimmy to rest once and for all. Unfortunately, that would not work. Al Capone suffered from syphilis and never sought treatment due to being embarrassed by it. Many critics have argued that the ghost of Jimmy Clark was Al Capone's mind playing tricks on him due to syphilis deteriorating his brain. What do you think? Drop your comments below on Spotify. Al Capone would be convicted of federal tax evasion later on and sent to Atlanta prison. He was shortly transferred to Alcatraz prison, where the reports of hauntings did not stop. Al Capone became so deranged, he was released on good behavior from Alcatraz. He would retire to his Palm Island estate in Florida. At the age of 48 years old, he would pass away. The ghost is said to have haunted him until his death. There is a great film that was made in 2020 called Capone, directed and edited by Josh Trank, starring Tom Hardy as Capone, about his life in prison and his remaining days suffering from dementia. The film really puts the spotlight on Capone in this time period of when he is said to be haunted, and it also focuses on what life was like for the mobster when he had retired and finally got out of the city life. Now, this was something that I thought I should bring to your attention as well, and I hope you enjoy the Smoke After Dark episodes that are rolling out. I have a lot more in store for you. Like, subscribe, and share with your friends. Let them know Smoke After Dark is ready to go. Ladies and gentlemen, just like the hands of time, I'm turning it over to you. Good night, and God bless. Palms 37-4. This part of the show is really the Q&A, and this last 3 minutes is kind of what I'll make the Q&A, and I'll do these where there's kind of a spot for that and an availability for that on that specific topic that I'm covering on the podcast. Today about the haunting of Al Capone's ghost and kind of why I wanted to do the podcast. Well, I watched a really good documentary, and it was a series of documentaries, and they brought up this mention of Al Capone's ghost, as well as seeing this film prior. It all kind of lined up to me, being inspired to want to put something out there about Al Capone, but also line up with my show and my outline of what I envision as Smoke After Dark being. So I feel like I hit the nail on the head with that. So that would answer that question on why I did it. The reason that I believe it's important is because we often look at the highest points of success, and that's what we evaluate in life. But when you look at mobsters and gangsters, there is this evaluation process that people put them through. So maybe this podcast, in a way, kind of helps, clear the fog on that and shows you how difficult life can be when you don't do things like go and seek treatment or go and just follow proper health procedures. I mean, you could have been talking about how long do you really believe Al Capone would have lived if he wouldn't have been suffering from these illnesses that he had, developed, decades earlier. And that is something I think is never really discussed or never really talked about and briefly even mentioned. So there's another little tidbit, a gem for you to tuck away to really take care of your health. It's so important nowadays to do that. And then to close this out, everybody, I just want to say thank you again for listening and tuning in. It really gets me psyched up when I see the listens come in on these. So when you're examining a true crime podcast or a show about urban legends or just the past and hauntings, ghost stories, different things of that nature. And I know people don't like to use the word ghost story, but I personally love it. I think it's the proper word. What would we like to do? We're sitting around a campfire. Well, you'd love to hear a ghost story. What did R.L. Stein bring us? He brought us those wonderful ghost stories. and so many of them as kids that, really kind of sparked my interest in that field long before paranormal TV shows or me even noticing paranormal shows. So I really look forward today to putting this out to you and letting you devour it. Please go through the other episodes I have. I worked really hard on them, and the transcript will be up there as well for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Again, share with your friends, like, comment, subscribe. I'm heading out. Thank you for your time again.